Somewhere on a coral reef right now, a snail is about to die. It never sees it coming. Nothing does. One moment, the snail sits safe inside a shell that has protected its kind for millions of years. The next, the shell shatters. Not cracks, shatters. Like it was hit by a hammer moving at the speed of a bullet. The attacker is called a mantis shrimp. It's barely the length of your finger, and it looks like a painted toy. But inside those small arms is the fastest weapon biology has ever built. A punch so violent, it boils the water around it. That weapon is a nightmare for anything its own size that dares to face it. So what happens if it isn't small anymore? What if it no longer fits, cute and harmless, in the palm of your hand? What if you took the most powerful puncher on Earth and made it the size of a shark? But before you meet that giant, let's look at what it can already do at its real size. Let's start with the punch. When a mantis shrimp swings its club, it generates around 1,500 newtons of force. That number means nothing on its own. So picture this instead. It's the weight of a full-grown lioness, nearly 150 kilograms, dropped onto a single point the size of your fingertip. But the weight isn't the scary part. A 150-kilo lioness just stands there. The mantis shrimp delivers all of that force in 1/3000th of a second, thousands of times faster than you can blink. So fast the human eye can't see it. Scientists had to film it at 40,000 frames per second just to watch it happen and to understand how strong that is for its size. The punch is roughly 2,500 times the animal's own body weight. Imagine throwing a punch 2,500 times heavier than you are. The first person to measure this was Sheila Patek, a biologist at the University of California, Berkeley. In the early 2000s, she studied the mantis shrimp strike and found something that shouldn't be possible. The club accelerates at over 10,000 times the force of gravity. That number needs context. An astronaut on a rocket launch feels about 3 grams. A fighter pilot blacks out at around 9. This shrimp? Over 10,000. It accelerates its fist more than 1,000 times past the limit a human body can survive before losing consciousness. The strike hits a peak speed of 23 meters per second. That's over 80 kilometers an hour, faster than a car moving through a city street. From an animal 17 centimeters long, this is why it can shatter snail shells, clam shells, crab shells like they're made of glass. It doesn't bite, it doesn't tear, it hammers, with the acceleration of a small caliber bullet leaving a gun. But here's the strange part. The mantis shrimp's punch is so fast that it breaks the rules of water itself. When the club moves that quickly, the water behind it can't rush in fast enough to fill the gap. The pressure drops to almost nothing. And in that near vacuum, water does something it shouldn't do at normal temperature. It boils. It vaporizes instantly, forming a small bubble. The phenomenon is called cavitation, and then the bubble collapses. When it collapses, it doesn't just pop, it detonates. For a millionth of a second, that collapsing point of water reaches a temperature of around 4,400 degrees Celsius. For perspective, the surface of the sun is about 5,500 degrees. This shrimp, with one underwater punch, creates a point nearly as hot as the surface of a star, almost 4 times hotter than volcanic lava. And with it, a flash of light, an effect called sonoluminescence. Sit with that for a second. This animal produces light and heat approaching the sun by punching water. And here's what makes it a true nightmare. Its prey gets hit twice in a single strike. The first hit is the club. The second is the cavitation bubble collapsing right behind it. Research at Duke University measured that this second hit can reach nearly 3 times the force of the original punch, which means even when the mantis shrimp misses, the ghost of its fist, the exploding water it leaves behind, is still enough to kill. This is why aquariums that keep mantis shrimp need specially reinforced glass. An animal the length of your finger can punch a crack straight through an aquarium wall. Now stop and see this animal for what it really is. It isn't the biggest predator. It isn't the fastest swimmer. It doesn't have the most terrifying jaws. It's dangerous for a completely different reason. It found a way to exploit a loophole in physics itself, turning pure speed into destruction in a way no large animal on Earth can match. And that brings us to the question this whole video is built around. If this creature is already this terrifying at 17 centimeters long, what happens if we scale it up to the size of a great white shark? So let's do something nature would never allow. Let's take this mantis shrimp and scale it up. Not twice as big, not 10 times. Let's take it from 17 centimeters to 6 meters, the length of a full-grown great white shark, about 35 times larger. And in this thought experiment, we keep everything that makes it terrifying. Same speed, same mechanism, same physics-breaking punch. Now watch what those numbers become. At its real size, its punch is 1,500 newtons. Scale it up to 6 meters, and that force explodes to around 66 million newtons. That number is so large, it's almost meaningless. So let's ground it. 66 million newtons is roughly 365 times the bite force of a megalodon, the largest shark that ever lived. It's the equivalent of several jet engines firing at once. It's enough to punch through the steel hull of a warship. A single punch from this creature could tear open armor humans designed to survive torpedoes. And measured as energy, each punch releases about the same as 50 kilograms of TNT. Think about that. Not its whole body exploding, just one swing of the club. Every punch is a small bomb, enough to throw a car through the air, enough to bring down a thick concrete wall. And it can do it again and again and again. The animal that once shattered snail shells can now shatter submarines. But the punch is only half the story. Because when we scale up the mantis shrimp, we don't just scale up its fist. We scale up its armor, too. The club a mantis shrimp punches with is wrapped in a material so special that human militaries are studying it to build body armor. The structure is called boulagand. Picture thousands of microscopic fiber layers, each one rotated at a small angle from the layer beneath it, stacked into a spiral. When a crack tries to spread, it's forced to travel along that spiral, longer, harder, losing energy the whole way until it dies out. This is what lets the mantis shrimp strike hard objects tens of thousands of times without its own club breaking apart. David Casailas, a materials scientist at the University of California, spent years studying this exact structure, looking for ways to make armor and aircraft materials that are lighter but tougher. Now scale that armor up to 6 meters. At this size, the mantis shrimp shell becomes tens of centimeters thick, built from one of the most effective crack-resisting structures nature has ever made. It's not a shell anymore. It's living tank armor. A bite from a large great white shark, something that can crush bone and tear through flesh, might just slide off this armor and leave nothing but a scratch. But there's one more weapon. And this is the terrifying one. Remember the cavitation bubble, the exploding water that reaches nearly the temperature of the sun? At real size, it's tiny, just enough to kill a snail. But when we scale the mantis shrimp up to the size of a shark, we scale that bubble up too. Now, every punch doesn't just hit the target. It creates an underwater explosion, a shock wave spreading in every direction, exactly like the depth charges navies use to destroy submarines. Water collapses, implodes, and bursts outward into a concussion you could feel from far away. A giant mantis shrimp throws one punch in these waters, and the pressure of it could reach animals kilometers away. So what do we have now? A 6-meter machine carrying a fist stronger than the bite of any creature that ever lived, wrapped in armor even a great white can't bite through, where every strike is an underwater bomb. The question now is simple. Who could it possibly beat? Before we drop this monster into the arena, if you're finding it strange that something this small could become this terrifying, leave a subscribe. It helps the channel a lot, and we've got a whole ocean of monsters left to explore. Now let's begin. First opponent, a large great white shark. Same length, 6 meters. A fair fight by size, except it isn't fair at all. The great white has to close in to bite. It needs its prey inside jaw range. With the mantis shrimp, that distance is a death sentence. The moment the shark enters the reach of that club, The mantis shrimp swings. A 66 million Newton punch to the shark's head. No struggle. No counterbite. The shark's skull caves in before its jaws even open. The fight ends in a thousandth of a second. So let's raise the stakes. Megalodon. 18 meters, 30 tons. The strongest bite in the history of fish. This animal is 3 times the length of our mantis shrimp and many times its weight. This should be a guaranteed loss. And by pure size, it is. Megalodon could swallow the mantis shrimp whole if it lands a bite. That if is the problem. Because to kill, Megalodon also has to close in. And the mantis shrimp's Booligan armor was built to do exactly one thing: not break. Megalodon's bite comes down and slides off, leaving a scratch. Then the mantis shrimp answers. A punch with 365 times the force of Megalodon's own bite. The king of every ancient ocean drops to a single blow. But there's an opponent more dangerous than Megalodon. Livyatan, a 16-meter predatory whale carrying the largest teeth ever to belong to any animal, each one over 30 centimeters long. And unlike the first two, Livyatan has something the mantis shrimp doesn't: intelligence. It doesn't charge in blindly. It uses echolocation to scan, keeps its distance, calculates. And this is the first time the fight actually gets interesting. Livyatan doesn't close in. That's what makes it different. It circles out of reach, sending out pulses of sound to build a picture of its enemy. It knows the club is the threat, so it waits. A smart predator doesn't swim into a loaded gun. It finds a way to make the gun fire into empty water. And on paper, this is the only way to beat the mantis shrimp. Force it to strike when there's nothing to hit. The club needs time to reset between punches. A brief pause. A patient, intelligent Livyatan could, in theory, bait a missed punch, then rush in during the moment before it reloads. But here's where the theory breaks. Remember the cavitation bubble. The mantis shrimp doesn't need to land a hit. Even a missed punch creates an underwater explosion, a shockwave spreading in every direction. Livyatan doesn't need to be struck to die. It just needs to be too close when the punch happens. And to land its own killing blow, it's forced to move in. The instant it commits, the mantis shrimp swings into empty water. And that bursting water crushes the whale's organs from the inside. Its intelligence brings it closer than any other opponent. And that's exactly what kills it. So that's it. The giant mantis shrimp beats them all. Great white, Megalodon, Livyatan. It's the most powerful predator the ocean has ever seen. Except, it doesn't exist. And it never will. This is the part we promised we'd come back to. Because everything you just saw is built on a small lie. We assumed that scaling up the mantis shrimp would keep its old speed. But nature doesn't work that way. The mantis shrimp's punch is fast because of a tiny spring mechanism. It loads energy into a small latch and releases it. That mechanism only works at small scale. The bigger it gets, the heavier the club, and a heavy club cannot accelerate at over 10,000 times gravity. Physics won't allow it. Neither will its exoskeleton. At 6 meters, under its own weight and the pressure of the deep sea, that armor would collapse under its own mass. It's why no crustacean is the size of a whale. There never has been. There never will be. And that's the most beautiful thing about this animal. The mantis shrimp isn't terrifying despite being small. It's terrifying because it's small. The tiny size you thought was its weakness is the secret to all of its power. Scale it up, and you kill the very thing that made it extraordinary. The next time you see a small animal and think it's harmless, remember the mantis shrimp and ask yourself what's hidden inside it. And if you want to see more of the monsters hiding in the ocean, subscribe. There's a lot more waiting beneath the surface.